An arboretum is a place where trees are planted intentionally so that we can better understand those trees. It might be for scientific study, it might be for aesthetics, it just might be for enjoyment to walk among the trees. It might be for educational purposes. A campus arboretum is such a place that is found at a college or university. And here we focus on using the trees in campus arboretum for our classes, for example, and to create a beautiful landscape. So the mission of the campus arboretum is to preserve, manage, and enhance a vital and diverse living collection of woody plants. It's also to provide a safe landscape aesthetic. So we want to manage the trees in a way that creates a safe environment, that the trees are healthy, and that provides a beautiful background to our campus landscape. It's also to promote the conservation of trees and shrubs. So we want to make sure that we're planting trees that are not going to become invasive. So these are going to be trees that are not known to spread beyond the place in which they've been planted. So they need to be safe to the rest of the environment. And the fourth point in our mission is to educate the college and the surrounding communities through horticultural display, curriculum, scientific research, and outreach. And one of the ways that we do this is by labeling all of the trees on campus. So this is an example of trees, labels that are on trees. And every tree on campus has one of these labels, either screwed or hung from it. And you can see that it says W&J Campus Arboretum at the top. There's a number here that is tied to, it is a unique accession number tied to our geographic information system. That is our database. So if you want to know about tree 501, you can contact me and I can tell you more about that particular tree. This tree comes from the pine family, and it is Picea abies, which means that it is a Norway spruce. And these are really helpful for people who are going across campus trying to learn about the trees, for students who are looking for certain trees for chemistry or art projects, and for people to learn the names of trees. They're also useful when a tree falls down, like in this tree, which is a blue spruce that fell down in a windstorm. And when this tree is removed, we write the reason and the date at which it was blown down or removed for some other reason. And then we can update the database. So every 2 years, the students who work with me and I go around the campus and we remeasure all the trees on campus, because every 2 years we can get good growth data and try to understand more about how trees have changed across those 2 years. We also evaluate the health of these trees and their condition and whether they need pruning and whether they're suffering from a fungal disease or something. And we pass along that information to the facilities so that they can better prioritize resources to manage those trees to maintain this safe and healthy stand of trees on campus. So another way that we meet the mission of the college Arboretum is by applying for Tree Campus USA certification. And this Arboretum was established in 2012. And so since that year, we have applied for that certification and earned that certification every single year. Part of that certification process is to hold an Arbor Day event every spring. And we've held one since 2012. Behind me, we have our very first Arbor Day tree. This was a limber pine that was planted in 2012. And when we planted it, it was only 10 feet tall, but it had a root ball of over 1,000 pounds. We've since learned that a 1,000-pound root ball is not a very easy way to get students involved in planting trees. So since then, we plant smaller trees and we tend to plant more of them, which is really helpful because now we can get more trees on campus and more species of trees that are added to our diverse living plant collection. So this tree is doing really well in this location. You can see it provides green through the winter. It provides thermal cover for songbirds that don't migrate in the winter, and it creates a very nice landscape aesthetic. Hey, good morning, Tim. How are you doing?
Good morning. How are you?
Good. I'd like to introduce Tim Lucas, who's our Director of Facilities, and we're here looking at this new Willow Oak. And I actually was deceived by this tree when I first saw it because the leaves look very much like a willow tree, but it's actually very oaky in the bark. And so it actually is a willow oak tree. And if you look really careful at these needles or these leaves, you can see these little tiny bristle tips right at the end, which tells us that it's in the red oak group. So this is a willow oak. And this is a great new tree to add to our living plant collection, because we have one other willow oak on campus, and it is a beast of a tree over by the old Thistle building where Thistle once stood. But this is a new tree that was just recently planted as part of a project that Tim was involved in last summer. So I was wondering, Tim, could you tell us a little bit more about maybe some of the other trees that were planted last summer? Because it was a big year for the campus.
So last year, 2019, we had a large campus grounds project happening, and we planted well over 100 trees last year, including 25 different species all across campus. And this here is one of the new trees that Jason's talking about. We have many trees that have been added that weren't part of the project that we add on a regular basis just to keep the campus arboretum growing. So Jason's done a great job working with everything and documenting it, and we manage it.
Thank you, Tim. And this, I think, is a really great addition to our campus arboretum. This is going to be a large growing tree. This will provide a lot of shade in this area, and the leaves are small, and so they're going to be a lot easier to manage for the grounds crew come this fall. We're going to go look at another new oak tree that is actually a new species on campus. I'm really excited because we planted it in an area of that accumulates a lot of water, and this tree is going to be perfect for that location. So let's go look at that new tree on campus. Hey Brandon, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. What are you working on today?
I'm actually measuring the diameter of this overcup tree.
The diameter of the tree, are you using a special tape?
I'm using a D tape, which measures the circumference of the tree's stem.
Okay, good, and it automatically converts it to a diameter, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. So this tree, what kind of tree did you say this was?
Overcup tree.
Overcup tree, Quercus lyrata. Named because the leaves supposedly look like a Greek lyre, the instrument lyre. Maybe this is a better leaf, but there's a lot of variability in the leaves. Well, we don't see this tree in southwestern Pennsylvania. It grows in these really wet floodplain, flooded forests. What are some of the adaptations that make this tree do well in these wet conditions?
Well, it actually grows an acorn, which has the top of the shell grow almost completely over the nut, so which increases its flotation in the wet, swampy places it grows.
Okay, cool. So the seeds, the acorns, can then disperse better.
Disperse better as they float all around the wet, swampy areas.
Oh, okay, that's great. So this is a new species. We've not had this species on campus, and the reason that we selected this species is because this area that we're standing in sometimes gets wet in the springs and in the early summers and in the fall if we get some rain. So this tree is adapted to growing in wet conditions. And so as a consequence, hopefully this tree will do really well and will help take up some of that water that floods in this area. What other kind of data other than diameter that do you measure?
We actually have tree condition, tells us whether it's still alive or if it's in excellent condition to show around the Arboretum project.
Good, and it's also helpful to facilities, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because then Tim knows which trees that he needs to direct his ground staff to manage.
Trees could even be dangerous if they're poor. They could actually harm the people on campus if large branches were to break off and fall.
So Brandon, you've worked as a campus Arboretum information specialist for a couple years now. Can you tell me a little bit more about this work that you do?
Yeah, this is my second year working here on campus. Last year we measured actually almost all of the trees on campus, the diameter and all the other specifics that go along with a tree. Mm-hmm. There were about over 1,000 trees on the campus that we measured last year and put them into our database.
Well, what about this most recent summer? I mean, you've had a lot of internships. You did a great job accumulating experience as an undergraduate, hands-on experience. So this past summer, what did you do?
Yeah, this past summer I was able to work at Allegheny National Forest with you and a couple other students from the college as we measured ash tree regeneration up there.
Good, good. So you've had a lot of practice with measuring trees and evaluating trees, haven't you?
Yeah, and it's been a fun time too.
What a magnificent oak, isn't this? Look at the size of this tree. This is a willow oak, one of the largest trees that we have on campus. It's almost 4 feet in diameter. This tree is a Quercus phellos, or a willow oak, and even though it's a big tree, it didn't quite qualify for the Pennsylvania Big Tree Registry. We're 6 points shy of that. So we're gonna come back and measure it again in a couple years and see if we can get onto this Big Tree Registry. But nevertheless, this tree provides a lot of what are called ecosystem services to our campus. So you might be asking, what is an ecosystem service? An ecosystem service is something that a tree provides, a service that we don't actually pay for. The tree provides it without our paying for it. So for example, this tree conducts photosynthesis, right? It pulls carbon dioxide out of the air, it makes sugars, it converts those sugars to wood, and then it stores that wood inside of the tree, in the roots, in the stems, and the branches. Of course, it puts some in the leaves, and those leaves are recycled, but it serves as a giant reservoir of carbon. So this tree, based on the National Tree Benefit Calculator developed by the U.S. Forest Service, this tree pulls out over 1,800 pounds of carbon dioxide a year. So let's say we take a typical car that drives, say, 12,000 miles in a year. That car emits about 11,000 pounds of carbon dioxide. So we would need 6 trees of this size just to mitigate the effects of that one car. This tree also takes up a lot of water from the ground and into the tree itself and stores that water. You might think of a tree as this giant reservoir of water. So as the rain hits the ground or snow melts, rather than running off down into a storm sewer, down into Catfish Creek, and then flooding the football field and everything downstream of there, this tree takes up over 8,000 gallons. Now imagine all the trees on campus and how much water they can take up and store. So these trees provide a lot of these, what we call ecosystem services. Also, trees near your home help reduce energy costs. So not only is a tree evaporating some water into the atmosphere and cooling the air around your building, but it also shades your building and reduces the amount of energy that's required to cool your building during the summer. So a tree this size can conserve close to 300 kilowatts of electricity every year. And because it also acts as a buffer against winds during the winter, it helps prevent the loss of about 71 therms of natural gas from our leaky buildings because it creates this buffer around the building. It also creates this huge surface area for particulates. So think of trees as giant air scrubbers or filters. So it's all this surface area where particulates that are in the air can settle onto the trees, on the leaves and on the branches, and then rain washes those particulates down to the ground surface. So again, the tree is acting as a filter, filtering out small particles, nitrous oxides, and other things that are blowing in the wind that we don't want to breathe. So we're starting at the W&J Campus Arboretum to use these National Tree Benefit Calculators to try to understand the value of trees to our campus, the ecosystem services that they all provide. And we were just talking about a single tree. Think about all the 1,000 or almost 1,200 trees that are on this campus right now and all of those ecosystem services. In fact, a few years ago, an environmental studies student calculated the total amount of carbon dioxide that's taken up by trees on campus every year. He estimated that they take up about 10 metric tons, 10.1 to be specific, 10.1 metric tons of carbon dioxide are pulled out of the atmosphere and stored in the trees for long-term storage. That's an amazing amount of carbon dioxide. He also calculated how much natural gas and electricity that the college uses. So you might be wondering, how much of that offset is the trees providing? Well, it's about 1.3% of the carbon dioxide equivalents that we're putting into the atmosphere that's taken up by our trees on campus. So this is an argument not only to plant more trees to store that carbon, pulling it out of the atmosphere, but it's also a recommendation to, or an impetus to actually think about where those energy costs are happening. And that's happening in many of the projects around campus. For example, in the quads, facilities has undergone these projects where they're re-insulating the buildings and reducing energy costs, increasing central air and heating services rather than having window air conditioners. And so in that way, the college is also reducing their carbon footprint using less energy, and saving money. So if we think about all the trees on campus and Narrows Ecosystem Services, that can help us better understand the value of trees on campus and how we can increase the number of trees and why we want to manage and maintain the health of the trees that we already have here. So I encourage you to look at trees as these reservoirs of carbon, as these filters of air, and as these reservoirs of stormwater that prevent the stormwater from flooding, carrying all these particulates down into our watersheds, downriver, and eventually into the Gulf of Mexico if you're in Washington County. So I want to thank you for joining us on this Campus Arboretum tour, and I invite you to come visit the campus and visit our trees on our campus. Please contact me, let me know when you're coming, and I'd be happy to walk around and talk about trees with you.